Oh, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Inside the Mirror podcast. I'm your host, Kyle David, as always. Today, I have with me another special guest. You know, I haven't been doing a lot of guests here in 2021, trying to be selective. But the right man came along, and I think he is the perfect guest for this week. I have with me Mr. Matt Smith. Matt is an entrepreneur, a husband, a father, a businessman, wears many hats. He's not wearing a hat right now, but we can get into that later. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Matt Smith. Matt, how are you?
I'm good, brother. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, you betcha. Thanks for having me, man. By the way, I just noticed that my room behind me is not very clean. So, well, that's life. This is life. This is real deal.
That fits the mold of the podcast perfectly, which is raw, unfiltered, uncensored, just pure authenticity. How about that?
Oh, exactly. So no, either my wife or I make the bed and clean the room. And this time we were both kind of moving at the same time to get the kids out the door and me go to work and her, she had tennis. So anywho, so
you mean life was busy?
Maybe just a little bit. You know, we've got 4 kids. 2 don't live with us. We got a grandbaby. I got business Smith Brown that I run. We furnish hotels. I've got life coaching business, Matt Smith Life Coaching. I'm writing a book. I'm getting my real estate license. Let's see, what else could I throw in there? I'm sure there's other things. Doing all kinds of stuff. So yeah. Mm-hmm. So
good, man.
Busy, just a tad.
A little bit. I know. No one. I didn't think anybody got busy the past 12 months. We all just kind of rested. No, I'm just kidding. Look, let's get into it, Matt. Give me your, as we said, give us the highlight reel, if you would. Kind of tell us who you are, where you're from, what are some highlights throughout the life, so we can get better context on you.
Yeah. So I grew up born in Oklahoma, grew up in Arlington, Texas, so not too far away from where we're located right now. And a part of growing up, I was big into sports, played football, soccer. That was a big part of my life, still is. I still play soccer every Friday morning around the corner with a bunch of guys. And during the process of just growing up and getting older, as time went on, I just started to learn more about business and life. And I'm trying to think, you know, in the process of doing that, I started to hit some walls in life, man. Just starting to hit, started to run into some addictions, some real challenges. And I'm giving you this, I'm giving you the reality of the highlight reels. You know, life was going good, but then at a pretty young age, I had a daughter. And so that kind of sent life into a different direction where I started to go to school, but stepped out of school to be a father. And then in the midst of that, started a business. So that's when I started what was Smith & Associates, which is today now Smith Brown. I was 21 when I started that, or 21 or 22 when I started that company. And then let's see, what else? So now, so I got 4 kids, a grandbaby, a beautiful wife. We've been married for 19 years. And man, life is clicking, but it has not been without its challenges, brother. Sure. Hasn't been without its challenges at all, which I know you can relate to. So so that's me kind of in a little bit of a nutshell.
I love it. Can you go, I mean, let's keep rolling, man. Go right into it. Can you talk a little bit about that addiction that you spoke of, or kind of where that began and what happened there?
Yeah, man, definitely. Because I know that's, you and I really connect on that piece.
Yep, 100%.
So awesome and that's, I think we're kindred spirits in that, man, as we've been there and we know what it's like. And I believe we both want to help people get through it and just get through life, but yeah, so mine really started in high school. It was all about having fun and cutting loose and being stupid. And, and a lot of it now, when you look back, hindsight 2020, you realize that it was really about an insecurity, of, hey, I want everybody to like me. And this is a way that I can have some freedom that I thought was some freedom. And so it really started there, and it was about fun. But there comes a point in time, just like there always does with sin, man. It quits being fun, and then it became more about pain management. It truly did. And got married, had children, and it just continued to snowball in the process of that. And it literally, I mean, my addiction to alcohol just about took me out, just about took my marriage out, just about took everything in life out. And I mean, like literally almost took life out. So in the midst of that, just coming to the realization of, I guess, just hitting the wall, and just saying, okay, I've had enough of this. and realizing that, now, and in my book that I'm writing right now, about realizing that we have a tendency to look at those times in our life, because, you're talking about addiction. I hit a wall in addiction, my marriage. And we talked about this, before. My marriage, we almost didn't make it, man. I mean, I thought, we're not going to get through this. The financial toll it paid on my life, not, there were times I'm like, how are we going to pay our bills? Because I wasn't managing money wisely, because I wasn't living life wisely.
Right.
I was, man, 40 pounds overweight, couldn't see my feet in the shower, and just out of shape, couldn't breathe, couldn't walk up a flight of stairs without going, oh man, and you start to look at those things in life, and you just start to say, is this life? Because if this is life, I don't know how much of this I want. And that's when I literally just said, okay, God, either come. Literally, I will never forget, to the day I die, laying in bed after I was having anxiety attacks, because I'm like, I don't know where life is going, and I'm literally having anxiety attacks, going, okay, God, either come get me or come change me, one of the two, because I can't do this anymore. And thankfully, he didn't come get me; he came and changed me, and man, and that's where I'm at today. So,
God, that's so awesome. It makes me so giddy, man. Just hear people, when people have gone down that path, right, and experienced it all, and then got, not perfectly, but been able to overcome and climb out of the hole, as if you will, right, or rebound from being trapped in the darkness. It never gets old to me to hear that from people. I think it might be obviously because you and I have lived through it, so what it's like. But it's just always inspiring to hear that. From now, let me flip the script a little bit. How were you able to? So you were still in active addiction while you were, right, getting married, having kids, building a business.
Yeah.
How did that work out, or not work out?
I was what's called a functioning alcoholic.
Classic.
I was what's called a functioning alcoholic. I grew up in a household with my dad was, man, he was a hard worker. And if there's one thing that I attribute to, he's one of my heroes. And if there's one thing that I attribute to him that he taught me is the value of hard work. I mean, he worked hard, and he showed up every day. And so he taught me that value of, if you want something done, I mean, it's embedded in me now. If you want something done right, you got to do it right the first time. So, and just taught me the value of hard work. So that was something that never really left. And it was just ingrained in me that you get up and you show up. It doesn't matter if you've had 2 bottles of wine that night, which was a regular occurrence for me. Was, I'd knock out 2 bottles of wine like it was nothing. And that's kind of how I live. But I just knew you get up and you show up. And so, but what, from the work perspective, I knew the job and I could do the job. But when it came to, being a husband and being a father and being a friend, being somebody that was really bringing value to other people's life, other than the fact that I'm showing up, doing a job and getting the money so that I can make sure that the family's okay, which is what a lot of men do. They take this comprehension that, hey, listen, as long as I'm providing, leave me alone. Let me do what I want to do. And it's taken a long time to learn that, man, that's not what a husband or a father is. That's the farthest thing from it, or it's part of it, but there's so much more to that, and when I started to realize the detrimental effect it was having in life, and just how it was, like I said, it almost wiped me out, man. Family, finances, when I came to the realization that there's more, and there's got to be more. I mean, that's when the invitation really started to shift, and I see it now as an invitation of when I hit those rock bottom places. But to answer your question, I was a functioning alcoholic. That's the best way to answer it. So
I can relate. It's funny because there's so many similarities we have. In my journey, story the same way, right? About 10 years of just actively using, drinking, drugging, and running people's businesses for them, right? Like, we're doing it well. Like, as I look back, you always go, man, I could have done that way better. But I did a pretty good job for not being in such a great place. It's wild how we are able to maintain right? And even excel in certain things
Right.
as we're not excelling in
Yeah.
very important areas, right? Using substances.
Yeah.
It's interesting how certain personalities, and it makes it more, what do you think about this? Do you think that makes it more dangerous when you're able to maintain?
It's a great question, man. Yeah, I do. To a certain extent, I do, because it never, it almost keeps you from having to hit a wall, and hit the low spot of saying, hey, listen, I mean, it's gone. I lost it all. So yeah, I would say that it does kind of detract in some capacity to keep you from hitting recovery sooner. At the same time, I believe God is gracious and merciful, and and hey, I've seen people hit rock bottom, lose it all, and that's what it took. And for me, it didn't take that, just smashing into the wall and just losing everything. So, but yeah, I would say that definitely kept me from or finding recovery sooner, because I thought, hey, what do I need this for?
Right.
And the biggest thing that it kept me from doing, honestly, is it kept me from getting honest and saying, listen, I'm an alcoholic. That's real. That's honest. No lie. I was, after 10 years, it took me 10 years in recovery of going in and out of AA and recovery before I finally took my first step, before I finally admitted that I was powerless and couldn't do this. And to the day I die, I'll never forget. I had been sober for about 6 months, because I kind of went in and out of sobriety. I'd been sober about 6 months, and I went to a golf tournament that some buddies put on for a friend of ours that didn't have insurance because of illness that he had as a child, and so they put on this golf tournament. Great reason to put on the golf tournament, but it was all of us in high school, and so it's all my high school buddies, and that's what we used to do. We partied, man. So just got obliterated. Spent the night with my friend in Arlington. The next day I have to drive home, and I'm driving home and I'm sitting there going, man, I feel like crap. I smell like crap. Now I got to go be a husband and a dad. And literally, man, I just heard there's been like 2 or 3 times when I've heard God so clearly, it was almost audible. And I just heard, and some people might go, that's really weird, but this is what I heard is, Matt, as your creator, I deserve more from you. And so does your family. That moment I finally broke and was like, God, I cannot do this. I'm an alcoholic and I have no power to stop. And it was in that moment, and that'll be 13 years ago this coming August. And
Congratulations.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
And I have not had a drink since then. And because anytime the temptation, the opportunity, I would just say, God, I can't do this. You know it, and I know it. And he's never failed me yet, man. So
God, I'm glad you're here. It's not an easy journey, right? That's one of the more difficult things in life, is overcoming addiction. And I know life is full of difficulties, but that is one that I can attest to. It's one of the toughest ones.
Yeah. So,
well, hey, how about going into more of the business realm? Like, so you started the business at 21 that's still in existence today, correct?
Yeah, still in existence today, and it's in a different form than it was.
Sure.
Obviously, given what COVID has done to the hospitality industry, it's pretty much, it's decimated it, and it will come back. So
sure.
But I started that company. I was 22, and I've been doing that for the last 25 years, basically, and it's been the main. It's been the main business that I've been running. I've run a co-working space. I had a co-working space. I started Matt Smith Coaching. So I've had some different businesses over the years. So that's been the main one that's always been in my life. So
when you're getting started, right, you're 21 and you're like, okay, I'm going to start a business. Were you always an entrepreneurial mind, like starting things, doing things?
I wouldn't. It's funny you say that, because I was talking to somebody the other day, and I don't call myself an entrepreneur necessarily. I call myself, what I try to do is try and look at how do I bring more value, whatever situation that I'm in, whatever that might look like. So I don't necessarily, as I've gotten older, I've started to see myself as more of an entrepreneur, because to me, and granted, it's the definition of an entrepreneur, what I define as an entrepreneur and what you define and what the listening audience might define as completely different.
Sure.
You might say an entrepreneur is somebody that has started 50 companies in their life and sold them off.
Right.
Somebody might just say, hey, an entrepreneur is just somebody with a great idea that goes out and does one company.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's, if it brings unique value, then that's an entrepreneur. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I've never framed myself in that way, in my own mind. But I'm realizing that as time is going on, and the definition of an entrepreneur is just someone that brings unique value to the marketplace, whatever marketplace that might be. And so I'm beginning to say, yes, I think I have always had that concept. It's just a matter of, or that context in my life. It's just a matter of, where do you want it to show up in? So, and Smith Brown's always been kind of where it showed up first. And it was I gained some real success out of that business. Obviously, I've been doing it for 25 years. And so, when you gain success and you have some stability, another thing, the older I'm getting, is the more I'm realizing is, and we talked about this before, is how comfort can become kind of an enemy. When you start to get comfort, it can become an enemy to you. For an entrepreneurial mind that says, hey, I want to bring value, but I got it pretty good here, so let's stick it out, instead of saying, look, I want to go here and I want to go here and I want to go here. And, and hey, getting married and having kids, that has a way of, new things in your life that, hey, some certainty and some comfort's not a bad thing for a period, but there comes a time where, especially men, it's like, listen, we need to go and conquer. And I said it in a term of not, I got to conquer the world, but it's, we're warriors, they're warriors at heart. And it's, hey, let's go out and let's create and accomplish. Maybe that's a better term, politically correct. You might get conquer. Anyway.
What a sad time where you can't even say conquer anymore. Come on.
Exactly. Not even,
if you're listening and you're offended by that, God bless you.
Yeah.
Where did you, this is for my own curiosity, where did you get the idea as a businessman, go, okay, I'm going to start a business? Where did you go, okay, I'm going to furnish hotels? Like, where did that idea, that's a super creative business model.
Yeah. And it really, and honestly, the idea, it was more it was a family business.
Oh, okay.
So my father and which is now my business partner, and Bob Brown is my business partner as well. They had started a company back in 1984. That's when the industry, as it is known today, just started. Hospitality, interior design, and procurement, it really got started in late 70s, early to mid 80s, as kind of what we know it is today, because it was always mainly just hoteliers. It was a lot of their wives, to be quite honest. All these guys, just their wives or, girlfriends or whatever, they did the design. And so as the profession itself started to take off, that's about the time frame it did. And so my father and Bob Brown, they started an agency in 84 when it was such a different gig then. And so in 96, they helped me start my agency. And so, I started Smith and Associates, and it kind of took off. And after about 10 years of running my gig, we all came together and said, hey, why don't we just merge them all together? Why not?
Nice.
Here. So, so it was a family business. That's how I got started. Yeah.
What, as far as you said, there's been other businesses, you said a co-working space and there's something else. So are these things that you just have an idea and you go, I'm doing it, I'm doing that?
Yeah, well, a lot, yes. And like the co-working space, so it was called The Grove. My dear friend, Ken Yonke, he started one up in New Haven. He was one of the, well, I know co-working in and of itself started in California, out in the West Coast, but on the East Coast, there wasn't really a whole lot of co-working. And he moved to, New Haven, Connecticut, and started this space called The Grove. And I helped, I was a private investor in that. He came up with, man, I want to kind of help. How do I help people really realize their dreams? And so co-working was just kind of coming to fruition, and it been on the scenes maybe, 5 years by that point. And so he started this co-working space, which just exploded in New Haven, and moved back to Dallas and said, hey, I've got this idea, and told me what it was. I did I kind of did a financial analysis on it. I just finished my MBA, so I did a financial analysis on it and looked at it. And honestly, I said, listen, Ken, I'm going to be real honest. This is a tough model to make money with, but let's do it because it's a great model to help people. It's a challenging model. I mean, WeWork is a pretty good example right now. They started to implode a little bit, and because we ran one, and I know it's a tough business to make money at. You got to be really slim on your expenses. But anyway, we ran that for 4 years, and we helped a lot of people, and we just got to the point where, because the whole mission of our co-working space was getting together people with social mindedness that wanted to help make the world a better place. So we had a lot of nonprofits within our organization, and the whole idea is, how do you bring these people together, build a culture, because they're all solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, people that want to do something and have an idea and want to take it to the marketplace, but they don't have access that they would within a large organization. And IBM, that's a huge company. You got tons of access to training and to, you've got a culture, you've got all kinds of things. And so we want to develop a culture so these people could have the same access to grow their business. So we did it for about 4 years, and it was a tough model to make money at. And we just finally came to the decision that, hey guys, we either keep going in the midst of what we're experiencing. And a portion of it is where we were renting, where our building was. We had this great little spot. The way to make money in that business, if anybody wants to start a co-working business, is you have to have private offices. Because those are your juggernauts. That's what brings in the real revenue. And so we had this great space across from ours where we had all these individual private offices that we said, let us lease for you, and they'll be a part of us. Great model. Business changed hands. New guys came in and said, oh, we don't want that model. You either take it all, I told them, guys, we can't do this. We're going to have to close our business down if you don't give us that access, because we need those spaces. And sure enough, and they came in, anyways, after the fact, they came back to us, because we said, we got to close, because you got, and they, about 6 months later, they came back and said, we really made a mistake. We wish we would have kept you guys and would have done it differently. And we're like, well,
it's done is done.
Doing it now, so is what it is. So, because I was the CFO of that company, and I sat with them, a year prior, saying, guys, you do this to us, this is what is going to happen. And that's exactly what happened. So anyway.
Good. That's cool though. As I'm listening, I'm like, is there a way to pivot that business model online? But then my second thought is, online is the business model, right? Like everyone is online. So
exactly.
You could create a website, I guess, and try to funnel people in from certain interests. Anyways, whatever. My mind just started ticking. I was going, how we pivot this?
Exactly. And COVID, unfortunately, is kind of, and we're going to come out of COVID, obviously, and that'll change. But that kind of shifted, after the fact of COVID. And we were all kind of like, boy, glad we're not in the co-working business.
Oh my goodness, right? Like what worse business could you be in during 2020?
Right, exactly. But what's crazy? Get this. I mean, this just goes to show the intelligence of Peter Drucker, because in the midst of starting this business, I wrote white pages and wrote a lot of research on the topic of co-working and contingent workplace and contract. And Peter Drucker in 96 said, by the year 2020, 40% of your workforce is going to be contract contingent, and it's going to be, and if sure enough, by 2020, that's probably about, so that just goes to show you how smart that was. Yeah.
What a prediction, like spot on to the year. Yeah. He knew something. Sometimes you go, something, don't you? No, I mean, that's just seeing the world from a macro level and, making a pretty decent prediction.
Yeah, exactly.
As you know, it's only going to become more and more remote. Office buildings are going to struggle. We'll see everything shift. That's life, right? Like things are constantly shifting, right? One time, horse and buggy was a big business. I'm sure you owned a buggy business, and now if you own a buggy business, you're probably not doing great.
Right? Exactly. If you had a VHS business,
right?
DVD started coming, you weren't real happy, and it's interesting to see. As a matter of fact, I was just in my industry. I was doing some research this morning. Ernst Young just came out with a new model that they're creating for hoteliers and REITs to look at how do you look at assets and from the standpoint of capitalization and return on investment. And they basically said there's so much uncertainty in the market. One, the models that once worked, for modeling revenues and income and just, what you're going to get. You got to throw them all out to a certain extent. Start new. And their prediction is 35% of the business traveler, 35 or 38, it was one of those numbers, of the business traveler, because of technology and to be able to do this, won't come back.
Gone.
Yeah. And so there, you have an industry that you think, what could ever change? How could this ever shift? It's hotels, people travel, but you get technology and there you go. And there's the shift, and it doesn't mean that, like VHS, it's not going away, it's not going to become obsolete, but it's going to mean a shift in the way that things are done and who travels and how travel, and especially with COVID, and who's going to be putting the proper precautions in place. And anyways, a lot of shifts. So you got to pivot no matter what. You got to learn to, even in a secure industry, you got to learn to say, okay, who moved my cheese? I mean, I don't know if you remember that book, but
what is that?
A long time ago. I forget who wrote it. It was a management book and it was brilliant. Maybe like
Who Moved My Cheese?
Yeah. And it was, what was his name? It was like, it's a short book, but it's really smart. He just basically said the whole point was when they research mice, when they would put cheese in a certain space, and once all the mice figured out how to go find the cheese, they would move the cheese.
Oh, I see.
So they had to go find, okay, well, how am I going to find a new route? And that was the analogy. Hey, your cheese got moved, right? Well, we got to find a way to the cheese,
Yeah.
So
that's great. I've never heard that.
Yeah.
Who Moved My Cheese?
It's a great little book, man. Great little book.
I love it. Well, and that's kind of how the world works, right? We don't have Blockbuster anymore, and I think that's one of the greatest examples. Blockbuster could have been held their model more loosely, and they were offered Netflix. I think it was for like $50 million. They could have acquired Netflix, fail, and now they're out of business, right?
Yeah.
I think I read something the other day. There's one last Blockbuster owned by a private owner somewhere, and I think it's like Minnesota or something.
I read that. I read that too.
They're gone, man. Toys R Us. I was listening to a podcast with the ex-CEO of Toys R Us the other day. Sorry. The world changed and they didn't see it, or they were too slow. I think they were too slow.
Yeah.
But technology is always going to win. Yeah. We as humans, since the beginning, we created the wheel. We've created, right? Like, when you create the new technology, it's going to win, right? When you create an airplane, people are going to start to use the airplane eventually because it's just more practical. Technology provides ease and comfort. Yeah. And so I think we now realize, especially through 2020, if you didn't before, especially if you're in business, right, is you got to hold your model loosely, because at any moment, new technology is coming. Yeah. And it could change, right? Car makers are freaking out right now. Yeah. We're all going to have to make electric. What are we, what? We never thought this was going to happen. Well, who moved the cheese?
Exactly. No, I mean, we're getting ready to Smith Brown. We're getting ready to have a sales meeting. I've been putting together a sales meeting for the last 2-3 weeks on top of everything else. It's basically saying, guys, listen, we need to keep some of the framework of our model, but we're going to have to blow apart some of it too, because, we've always focused on hospitality has been always our largest driver in this particular, as a sales agency. But guys, we're going to have to look at different, we're a sales agency that used to specialize in hospitality. We're going to have to be a sales agency that doesn't still specialize in hospitality, but we're going to have to find new marketplaces as an agency that we can go bring value to. And a lot of it's going to have to be through, digitally. A lot of it's going to be, how do we create that value through the internet, through social media, through, essentially digitally, because, we're only so many people and we only got so many hands and feet. So, so it's a whole, to your point, if you hold your model too tightly, you ain't gonna hang on for too long.
Right. And I think that's just something you can apply to life, right? Like I was talking to my sister the other day, and she, she's probably like, don't talk about me. It doesn't matter, Kristen, you're fine. But I was trying to just listen and process some things with her. And there was a few things she said where I just had to say, Kristen, just out of love, hold it loosely, man. Hold that idea loosely, right? Because things can change at any moment, or our certainty in life or our comfort, right, is sometimes dangerous, right? hold it loosely.
Yeah, no, exactly. I totally agree. You know, and I think last time we spoke, I've come to the realization, you know, in the midst of all this, and which is what caused me to start writing my book and caused me to really, because I'd coached for years, but it's what caused me to say, listen, I'm going to create a true coaching practice with, you know, and get a bigger digital footprint, and is just, you know, this particular idea is the uncertainty that, you know, COVID has brought in so many people's lives, and how much we place on certainty and comfort. And when that gets stripped from you, of learning that, you know, hey, listen, man, the ability, our amount of uncertainty that we are capable of experiencing will always be our cap. I think that, you know, last time we talked that, and I've learned that however much uncertainty I'm able to accept will always be my cap for growth. Because in the midst of when you get it all taken from you at the snap of a finger, your ability to bring value got swiped. And you're like going, what do I do now? Who am I now? You know, what's going on now? And that's why, to be able to hold loosely, like you're talking about, and say, okay, listen, my value wasn't necessarily there. I mean, that's great. That worked for them. And I, you know, when you've done something for 25 years, like I've done, and it's brought that much comfort, and I say comfort, you know, it's brought that much stability. Let me use, I think comfort can sometimes look, you know, have a term of you just sit around and, oh, I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
It brought stability to life, you know. And when you watch your business after 25 years bring that much stability and literally just float away, I mean, I can tell you can rock your world, man. And that's what caused me to say, listen, there's in wanting to start the coaching practice and make it bigger, I should say, and writing the book was I'm not, you know, I'm in the same boat as a lot of people, and I'm started to realize there's a lot of people out there that are getting their worlds rocked, and they don't know how to walk through it. You know, and as I started to look back on my life, and I know I jumped out of the chute here in our introduction of addiction, and I, you know, I just jumped out of the chute there, because I like to tell my story out of the chute, say, hey, like, guys, you know, this is who I am, but this is the problems that I had. Let's talk about that. Let's get there. But is looking back on life and in my life and going, man, you know, the ways that all the stuff that God has brought me through, you know, of going, Matt, which is, as I mentioned, the title of the book is The Only Way Out Is Through. And I don't mean to keep talking about that, but it helps me to crystallize what you just said. And look, the only way out is through, man. And going through means you got to let go a lot of stuff, you know, and start asking yourselves new questions, let go of assumptions, beliefs that no longer work, and just say, okay, what are you asking of me? What new do I need to learn? What new skill set do I need to grow in? What new understanding do I need to look at? Because the reality is this, and I did a big research paper on this. I was sitting with the CEO of Kimball International. I think it's a multi-billion-dollar company. They do furniture. They make furniture. They make Kimball pianos, if you're familiar with Kimball pianos. But what they mainly do is electronics, which most people, I don't know, they would know. I don't know if anybody knows Kimball International, but it was a manufacturer that we used to work with. And I was sitting with the CEO of that company, and we were talking about the disparity of income in America today and how that disparity is growing. And as we were sitting there discussing it, I said, you know, my contention is this. It's technology. That is what is creating the biggest disparity in income, is technology. And he said, Matt, that really makes sense, because we used to have, and this was when they used to do a lot of manufacturing in the United States, and they had started to bring some back. They had picked up and pretty much gone exclusively
China.
Yeah. And then they started to bring some back. But he said, Matt, what you take 4 guys now takes 1, because he has a machine, some form of technology. And what that guy does isn't manual like it used to be. It's not 4 guys picking up a sheet of plywood, putting it down and getting a saw. And it's 1 guy that has this machine that has a vacuum that picks it up itself, sets it down, and he has to program that thing. So he said, it's so much more cerebral. So he said, you know, that's where, and I think that's today in what we're experiencing, is people have to look at the idea that I have to ask life, what are you asking of me? And with this, and we talked about this when we talked last time, is this little bitty tweak on life of saying, this life's not happening to me, it's happening for me.
Yeah.
So life, what are you asking of me? And because of that, what do I need to know, go maybe learn and grow in and understand? And, and unfortunately, sometimes it takes, you got to smack a wall and you're like, ooh, okay, where do we go now? And that's such a, when you've had years and years and years of stability within an industry, within a business that you've owned. I mean, I don't know how many people business that they've done for years, just gone, and so what do you do? And that's when you have to get very clear on, God, what are you asking? Life, what are you asking? What do I need to do now? And where do I need to go? And not blame and not fault find. And, because you can do that all you want, but it ain't gonna solve anything.
Sure.
And it's just a matter of, okay, where do we go from here and what's next? And that's focus, that's meaning, and that's starting to ask real good questions. One of the worst questions that we can have a tendency to ask ourselves is why me? Why this? Why did this happen? Instead of going, no. That's a horrible question. Say, what's great about this? What could be great about this? How can I take what's going on and move it into a new direction that might be more of a reflection of who I am to begin with? You start asking those questions, you're going to start getting better answers. I didn't really start focusing on writing a book and expanding my coaching practice and getting my real estate license. Something I had, all of these things I wanted to do, and I had doing for a while. But when I started to ask these questions, okay, what is life asking of me? I started to realize that, man, all these things that I have wanted to do, I can now, what's great about this is I get to go do this stuff. I get to go focus in on it. And my business is starting to come back. Smith Brown's starting to come back a little bit. But now I've got locked down space and time where I realize I can do so much more than I thought I did or thought I could. If you just get a big enough why and get a good way of scheduling your time, I realized I can accomplish so much more than I ever thought possible, just because the pressure was never applied. And, now that the pressure's been applied, I'm like, I can do this, but that pressure can either break you or it can make you stronger. And that's a choice, brother. I mean, I am learning it before we started, I was telling what the chapter I'm writing on right now is the power of focus and meaning, and how it can literally be life or death. I mean, if you ever read, we talked about the Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl. Have you ever read that? Okay.
Heard of it, never read it.
Oh, if I would suggest that book to anybody, because Viktor Frankl was a Holocaust survivor. He was a psychologist, and before he went into the Nazi party come and took control, he was a psychologist. And in the midst of going through Auschwitz and some different concentration camps, that the whole book is Man's Search for Meaning, was he realized he had to find a meaning in this. And those that didn't, they didn't make it. And so that's why I say it can literally, and now that's an extreme case, and I don't mean to about the extremity of thinking that life's ever compared to that. I mean, but
it just, I get the idea though.
Yeah, I mean, just how vital it can be in our lives, because if what's happening in my life right now and what's going on, is this God punishing me or is this God rewarding me? I'm going to make completely different decisions because of the meaning that I just made, and it's going to send me in completely different directions. And that book is just unbelievable. I mean, I don't think anybody can speak to meaning better than him in that book, of just helping to understand that it is so vital, the focus that you have in times like this, to say, listen, what is great about this? What could be great? And where could I move into a new space in my life? And God, what are you asking of me? Because if it's happening for me and not to me, that means there's a purpose. That means there's a meaning. Because I think that's where we get caught sometimes, is why is this happening? What's the meaning of all this? Where's the value in all this? I mean, in his book, he gives examples of where those in the concentration camp, the soldiers, they would have the people move a set of bricks from one space to the next, and then just move it right back to the same space and right back to the same space. And he said those guys that were doing it, came back just mentally and emotionally beat to heck, because they're like, what is the purpose of this, and when without meaning, it's like, where are we going? What's life about?
Right.
Anywho.
That's good. It's so wild, like, because it makes such simple sense when you start to lay it out. And like you were saying the last time we talked, asking the right questions when tough things happens, that's what brings meaning or focus, right? Is you have to ask the questions to gain the focus, right?
Yep. No, exactly. And I think I'm learning as I'm researching more and more, and just in talking with people more and more and coaching more and more, is we don't ask enough questions, man. We do a lot of talking. I was at I think I mentioned this, maybe I didn't. I spend time at Our Calling, which is a homeless, it's not a shelter, but it's like a service center where the homeless can come in and get a meal, and they'll give them a shower and give them new food, and and they get them connected to wherever they need. So, and they have a recovery program there, and I was there at the recovery program, and the guy that was running the program, a nice guy, genuine guy, really cared, but there were people in there that were there for recovery. And the entire hour was spent speaking. This guy was just speaking about recovery and the importance of it, and how you need to do it, and how you need to be a part of it. And I honestly, I started to get frustrated, because
Sure.
I'm 12 years sober. And so anyways, I finally, when the guy's done, I say, hey, do you mind if I ask some questions? So the guy sitting to the right of me, I said, hey, can you tell me a little bit about your story? What's life about for you right now? Tell me. Well, within 5 minutes of just asking some questions, found out the dude was once married, had a business, a tattoo business, had lots of money, got addicted to crack. Now, because of his addictions, lost his family, lost his business, living on the street, doesn't know where his next meal is coming from, and desperately wants to get life back. He wants to quit smoking crack and wants to get life back together. And I learned that in 5 minutes by asking questions, instead of just an hour of just trying to tell somebody what needs to be going. And I'm not saying that's ill-intended.
Sure. Good intention.
Yes. But
maybe poor execution.
Yeah. But asking good questions is a skill set.
Sure.
And learning to ask yourself good questions is a skill set, and ask others good questions is a skill set of learning to say, listen, I don't have to have the answers. Why don't we ask some good questions? And maybe we can find some better answers if we ask some better questions. And I think the best questions come when you take all assumptions aside, when you blow the assumptions out. And just say, listen, kind of what you said, you said earlier, you got to hold your framework loosely. When you can let go of the framework entirely, I mean, I mentioned a book that I had read, Questions Are the Answer. I'm trying to remember his name now. He's the MIT director of MIT. His name's, I'm looking it up right now, Gregerson. And he's a director at the MIT Institute of Innovation. And he came up with this concept called the question burst. And the whole gist of the concept is you got to take all your presuppositions and frameworks apart. That's where you get your best questions. And he gave examples. Michael Dell, when Michael Dell started Dell Computers, he opened a computer up and basically said, this costs $5, this costs $4, this costs $9. Why are we charging $1,500 for these things? Why can't they cost $500? And that was, nobody had ever, and it was pretty simple, because he wasn't in the framework of, well, this is how we do it, Yeah. And I don't know that entire story. He explains it better than I do, but and it's a great book. He just gives example after example of those that have created real innovative product in our day and age, were people that just said, why is this way? And he uses he even uses Peter Drucker, who, is years past, but so anyhow, the best questions of when you let go of the framework and say, and part of that question burst, which is, I think, one of the reasons why we have a tough time asking good questions, is we have the presuppositions, we pre-frame them too much instead of letting the framework go and go, what could be? What's great about this? Nothing. Okay, what could be about this if you wanted it to?
Right.
What would you do if you wanted to do this?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess I could, because then it gets your brain into the possibility of, because when you're stuck, what's great? Nothing. Well,
Yep.
what could be? All right, well, I could potentially start dreaming here or thinking here,
Yeah.
what could be. So,
Huh. It's like I was having a conversation with my mother the other day, and then I was on a podcast the other day talking about it's funny how there's a collision almost between emotion and logic sometimes. And I think that kind of plays a role here where you're saying, because the nothing's right with it. It's,
yeah,
that's almost an emotional, you've had that emotional precept there, right? And when you can break that and go, but what could, you
yeah,
become more logical. Well, I mean, we could, or creative maybe is a better word,
yeah,
but you know what I'm saying? The creative, logical stuff doesn't mesh well with the emotional side. Sometimes you have to become much less emotional to hear the answers to the questions.
yeah. I agree, because it's a pattern of emotion, it's a pattern of thinking, and it's a pattern of emotion. And when those two start going side by side, that's
Mm-hmm.
you're locked in, man.
Mm-hmm.
You're locked in. So, but no,
So where are you at? Sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
So where are you at with the book? The only way it's through.
Yeah, the only
I
way out,
love the title. I mean,
yeah, well, and I
the
think
only way out is through.
yeah, and and I mentioned the title came to me when I was on that rim to rim to rim hike in the Grand Canyon. It was a 22-hour nonstop, and about 6-7 hours left.
Yeah, repeat that story again, because I heard it, but these people haven't heard it. That was
Yeah,
wild.
so it was the rim to rim to rim. It's the Grand Canyon. So you start at one rim, you go through the Grand Canyon, you go to the top of the other one, and you come right back through. And we didn't stop or hike. We just went nonstop. And so started at 1 in the afternoon, finished the next day at 10 in the morning. And so 22 hours, 20,000 feet of elevation change. And with about 6 hours left, 6 to 7 hours left, I get hit with this enormous sugar crash, which about 2 weeks prior, I had a sugar crash, and it literally took me 30 minutes. And I had like 2 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, which I don't eat sandwiches because I don't eat bread, but I'm like, I got to get food in my mouth. And I was drinking orange juice, which I don't drink because I don't drink the sugar, but I mean, anything and everything to get in my mouth to overcome this sugar crash that I'd had. But that was at home. I'm at home and I'm just pumping myself with food. Well, I'm in the middle of the Grand Canyon, and I got 7 hours left, and I have, I've got a certain amount of segmented food per hour that I can intake, to get doing. If I just suck all my food out, now I'm in trouble. So my brain starts, it's 3 in the morning. And so immediately my brain starts saying, Matt, you are in trouble. This is serious. And my brain starts going, dude, I don't want to die out here. I mean, we had, as I mentioned, we had Care Life insurance or Care Flight insurance, but none of us had a cell signal. So it's not like anything, it's not like we could call and, hey, could you come pick me up at the bottom? We couldn't even get a
I'm at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Come grab me.
Could you Uber flight me out of here and bring some sugar with you or something? So, and thankfully the people I was with, they were like, here, Matt, my good friend Clay was with me, and he said, hey, Matt, here's my electrolyte drink, take this. And there, here's some beef jerky, here's some, some sugar dots. And so the community I was with, the people we were with, there were 5 of us in total. They started saying, hey, here's food. And that was great. But I had to get the psychology going, man, because I'm like, listen, I got 2 choices here. I either get to stick and stay, or I can keep moving. And literally, as I'm praying and saying, and I literally, whether it was true or not, that I wasn't going to get out of there, in my mind, I'm thinking, I don't want to die out here. This is, and that's the intensity that was. And as I stopped and prayed and said, Lord, listen, I need help, because this is real, and it was with all heartfelt. I literally felt off the back of my head fired this answer of, Matt, the only way out of this is through. You got to keep moving, which means you got to get a focus and you got to get a meaning. And in that moment, I literally, no lie, I started saying, okay, I got a family that's waiting on the other side of this, and they depend on me, and I love them, and I'm going to see them. And I got these people here with me that, you know what, they're tired too. And I'm sure they're worn out, but they depend on me. I go down, that's going to affect them. So they're depending upon me, and so literally no lie, for 2 hours, I had a mantra in my head going, I'm going to see my family and I'm here to serve. I'm going to see my family and I'm here to serve. And I just kept that mantra going because I knew in that moment, if I don't find a good focus and I don't find a good meaning in this, who knows, because, hey, whether it was true or not, I had a choice. I can stop. I can say, guys, I'm done. I can't do this. My body's quit on me. And I gotta, hey, you all keep going. You're going to have to call somebody. I'll try and keep moving. That was an option. But the answer that I got was, Matt, the only way out is through. You got to keep going. So that means you got to change your psychology. So that's what the book is about, is when, and COVID is such a perfect example of what happens when life just hits you, man. And you're like, how do we, where do we go? And what do I do here? And also, in the book, and not only just when life hits you, what happens when you start to see some erosion in life and you start to say, hey, this is an area of life I've let go. I've let too much comfort come in, and now here I am, and boy, this could turn into a real landslide if I don't really start to take control of and do what I can do to bring change to it. And then there's the idea of what do you do when there's just something you always wanted to do, something you always wanted to create or accomplish or experience more of in your life. And so that's the gist of the book. And I've got an ebook that's going to be coming out here in the next I'm looking to have it out next month, actually, which is a short ebook. And then there's going to be a little 6-week course with it. And then the big long book, the whole book, is, I'm pinning the end of August to have it done. So I've got a lot in the fire right now. So that's my goal. But the other two, the ebook and the course, I know will be complete, and those will be out next month. But the long book, I'm pinning on August. I've got so many different, I'm locking time down to write, but when you write a big long book, it's a little different, and so, and I've got, roughly 150, 175 pages. So yeah. So I've got a good framework and I'm moving. It's just, it takes time to, keep flipping away. So
it sounds like, even the title of the book is just, it sounds like to me, from what I understand, it's just a resource for perspective, right? Like, if the only way out is through, that's a mindset, right? Like you said, or your mindset is there is no way out, or there is no way through.
Yeah.
But is that correct? And like, it's all you're doing, the coaching, the book, sharing your own experiences on how you've managed or failed or succeeded and just handling life's obstacles. It all comes back down to your mindset, right? Your perspective on the situation.
I agree 100%, brother. I agree 100%. And that's where, the value of, and you're right. I mean, that's the book in and of itself is, I talk about questions. Start asking yourself better questions. I talk about focus. You got to get a better focus. I talk about how do you interrupting the old patterns? Like we were just saying, it's just a lot of things in life are just patterns that we don't even know exist. There's the most recent study that I read about, I think it was either Stanford or what one of the colleges did, that we don't know why we do 40% of what we do. I know depending upon the study, you're going to see 40 to 80%. I mean, it depends on what study you read, but it's the automaticity that that life goes through. So it's how do you interrupt those patterns? And the main thing is just becoming conscious of them, understanding they're there, and understanding them, and then realizing there's a simple answer. And that sounds almost counterintuitive in a lot of terms, but when you can understand that all behavior is nothing more than trying to hit a need. So I pull back an arrow with a behavior, be it working out, be it, getting married, be it whatever behavior. When I let that arrow go, I'm just trying to hit a need. That's all it is. Along the way, it has a tendency to pick up some beliefs and pick up some ideas of how I can do that. And so that's what helps determine where the arrow is going to go and the different vehicles that I want to pick up, or that I might be using it as the arrow. But when you can put it in those terms, that every emotional pattern, thinking pattern, every behavioral pattern is just trying to hit a need. It's going after a target, and it's just picked up some beliefs along the way. It puts it in such simple terms that you're like, oh my gosh, this is just a vehicle. I just got to change my vehicle. I mean, one of the literally the before I hit that moment in the car when I said, God, I can't do this. I didn't know. I will never forget too. There's a lot of things I'll never forget in life. But my wife saying, and thankfully my wife was so gracious when I was, in the midst of my addiction and so loving and caring in some aspects, even though our marriage it started to kind of turn as we started to, seek help but I was still drinking. And I remember her coming to me one time and just going, Matt, I want you to, what can I do to help you quit drinking? And I remember just saying, Keely, I want to quit more than you want me to quit. I promise you. I just don't know how.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to not drink. It's what I've done. It's what I've always done. It's how do you not do this?
Yeah.
And when I was able to comprehend this concept that it was just a behavior that was just trying to meet a need, I was able to see, oh my gosh, this is just a vehicle. And if I could meet the needs with a different vehicle, that helped me to say, this is a pretty simple solution, actually. Now, addiction's a little different in my mind, and I think you could probably relate with this too. It's a lot more simpler when you're talking about health or habits, or it's a little easier to see, hey, I can just change behavior and meet the needs and probably meet them at a better level and be more happy. There's something about addiction where in my belief and what I've experienced is only God can get you out of that one, man. It can be simple in terms, which it was once I realized it. I'm like, God, I can just change vehicles, man. But there's that piece, I believe, that you have to, God, I can't do it. But that's that. So in the book, I talk about that. Just what's the simplicity of the answer? What's Occam's razor? The simplest answer is usually the right.
My buddy Mark, shout out to my buddy Mark.
Oh,
He's been using Occam's razor for 15 years, always being like, Kyle, the thing that makes the most sense usually makes the most sense. And I'm like, okay, all right, it makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So anywho, but yeah, I mean, it to me, it's a matter of how can I, because like I said, and you've been there too, brother. I mean, that's why I love your podcast, and we talk about this what you're doing and how you're helping people and putting this podcast together is when you've been through it and you've gotten some understanding and comprehension of it. It's like, listen, I was telling a buddy of mine the other day, as Smith Brown will eventually come back, and I could just go back to doing Smith Brown once it comes back, and but I'm just starting to realize I believe with all my heart that we were made for more. Every one of us was made for more than I think sometimes, and maybe I'm just speaking to me, and if I am cool, I'll speak to me that I was made for more, and I realize that there are people. And I think you do too, which is why you're doing this, that need this, man. They need someone to come alongside them and say, hey, brother, I've been there. I can walk with you, and do you want me to walk with you? And if so, hey, here's some tools, here's some resources, because look, I've been there, because if you look at it, there's kind of basically 4 categories of life. You got health and fitness, money and finances or career, your spiritual life, and what's the third one? Relationships. Yeah. So, you get the 4 categories and you're like, hey, how are you doing in those 4 categories? Anyway.
I think that's good, man. I mean, that is the simplistic way to see life, right? Is we've overcomplicated so much, right? And I think what you're doing is important because you're bringing in resource, but it's simplifying the perspective that we have, right? It's reframing it, asking the questions to get a better focus, and simplifying what we've overcomplicated. Now, and this is something I say a lot, and sometimes people give me pushback. I said, in my opinion, life is not complicated. Life is simply hard. I don't believe that life is complicated. I believe from a macro level, life is simple, right? If you believe the Bible, right, it's pretty much laid out for you. Even if you don't believe in the Bible and you're able to shift your perspective and see life from a 30,000 foot view, as my dad says, or a macro, eyes wide open view, life isn't super complicated. There are nuances that make it difficult and hard, but we make it complicated. It's just hard. Life is not super complicated. nuanced little iterations of life can be complicated, but like overall we all understand you live, you got to survive, and then we got to do these things to live a somewhat meaningful life, then you die. Okay, cool. But all that is just really difficult because life is unpredictable. Right?
Yeah, no, exactly. And I'm actually kind of trying to look at that right now currently with life is hard, what life is. 'Cause I was telling a buddy of mine all the stuff that I've got going on in my life, and not only that, I mean, we've got other things with daughters and grandbaby, and he was like,
Sure.
dude, life is so freaking boring compared to yours. I get up, I go to work, I go to my kids' practice, I go back to bed. And it was like, and which can, in my mind, sometimes start getting into, golly, Matt, life is so hard. You got so much going on. You got this and this, and it's all good stuff for the most part, but
right.
I don't know. I've been kicking that around, that concept around of life being hard. And I don't disagree. I know that there are people that have a lot harder, than we do. I mean, there are people, that probably wondering where their next meal is coming from,
100%.
And so life is a lot harder, but for others, and hey, there's people that have life a lot easier than I do. My life does have some complications, but when I think about that, though, I just keep going back. I always go back to and recently I was reading on these, and I think last time we were talking, maybe I mentioned it, maybe I didn't, but I look at the life of Joseph. You're talking about the Bible. I was looking at, if you read the life of Job and the life of Joseph and the life of Jacob and the life of Moses, and if you look at these people's lives, if you look at when did God deliver them, he didn't deliver them out of anything. He delivered them through it all. The Israelites had to go through the wilderness. Noah had to go through the flood. Moses had to go through Egypt. Jacob had to go through the 7 year, the famine. Joseph had to go through prison. So all of these, you look at all these, David, before he was called king, he had to go through 14 years of not sitting on the throne. So you look at all these people, characters in the Bible, and you realize that the only way out was through. They never delivered them from anything. He brought them through it. And so when I look at life in the context of hard, that's going back to the meaning pieces, because I mean, at what point in time did Joseph or Jacob or David or Moses or Noah or any of them ever stop and say, okay, God, you want to explain to me what is going on? Why is this so hard? I don't get it. You're asking me to go back and stand in front of, a Pharaoh and tell him, let my people go. The dude could kill me like that, help me understand this, or Joseph, hey, dude, I'm in prison, God, can you help me get this?
Right.
And I got to believe there were moments where they're thinking, help me understand this, please,
Sure.
And, but but there's always, when you read the backside, there's the beginning, there's the end, and then there's the part through, going through. And I think that's where a lot of us get stuck, is in that through piece, and I was doing, and I know you probably have a broad audience of people that have different faiths and different religions, and that's totally cool. Mine is, I'm a follower of Christ, and looking at the way through, I was doing a study on that just this morning, actually. And I've created a new term, is the only way out is through, and the only way through is Jesus.
That's good.
Yeah. And because if you read different scriptures, like First Peter, Corinthians, there's these different scriptures I was pulling out. So it's through Jesus that we have righteousness. It's through him that we have victory. It's through him that we have, that we're more than conquerors. It's through him that we have, that we have faith. So I'm starting to pull that out a little bit more, which will probably go in the book. The only way out is through, and the only way through is Jesus, man.
Maybe that's a great way to end the book.
Yeah, right.
Who knows? I'm not the author here. I'm just throwing out ideas.
Hey. I love it.
I got lots of ideas. Okay, we don't lack ideas on this end, but
yeah.
Okay, well, before we wrap it up, I have a couple selfish questions for you.
Yes.
Well, maybe just one overarching selfish question, but I think it'd be good for anybody listening as well, as somebody that's farther along on the journey, and kind of running with this idea that as even in being a coach, is that everybody wants something out of life, right? People have goals, dreams, desires, and but I think sometimes we become our own worst enemy, right? Because we don't allow people to speak in, or we don't process, or we don't ask the right questions, or we just need somebody to kind of guide us along. Anyways, all that being said, the question is, you talking to your young self, 21-year-old Matt, you're starting a business, maybe less the addiction and that stuff, but as far as somebody who is setting out to accomplish something and you haven't seen it, now you're living it, right? You're living in the stability of the success of that thing. But as someone young, uncertain, but gung-ho and excited to start and build something, what advice would you give back to yourself if you could go back and say, oh, now that I've lived it, this is how you need to pursue your goals, dreams, desires differently?
Man, that's a good question. Yeah, I know, because I know in the beginning, I just rocked out with, yeah, I had an addiction problem. I just went to town right immediately.
Same. That's me too.
Gosh, that is a really good question. What would I tell myself at 21? And do I know? So I know myself. I mean, it's like I know who I am at 21, and I know who I am today. So I'm telling you that I know. Okay.
Yeah, you're talking to little Matt.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're revisiting. You're going back and being like, "Hey, little Matt, I've learned some things. You're about to embark on this journey to build something.
Yeah.
You need to know this, right?"
Yeah, yeah. You know what I would tell myself? Man, I would tell myself, to the best of my ability, I would try and tell myself, don't care what people think. Step out and go on, because there will come a time when it won't, I promise you, it won't matter. So do what's in your heart and what you know is right. Don't care what people think. And I promise you, you'll go through some crap at the beginning and you'll take some rejection, but when it's said and done, oh man, you're going to wish that you had, because that's my biggest regret. Is there were times in my life where, because of certain circumstances that had taken place, I placed too much value in what people thought of me. And I no exaggeration, I truly believe that some of those decisions sidelined me for 10 years, sent me into addiction, sent me into, so that would be the best advice I would try to give myself, and hoping that I would listen. As I say,
sure,
please, do what's in your heart, and you'll don't care what people think, because at this, on the backside, it will be inspirational. People will see it, and because I think more than anything, what people want today in life is they want inspiration. They want to see somebody that's been through, that's gone through the crap and is still standing and can say, listen, you've been through it, so.
That's great. So, man, that's a good way to end this. Is just, I mean, we live in a world of comparison, right? We now have the internet, which is the ultimate platform to compare. Yeah. And so I think that's just so profound. And we all need that coach or that Matt to remind us of, hey man, later down the road, it doesn't matter what people think. It doesn't matter one bit, right? Like you said, and I saw this thing yesterday on the internet, and it said the same thing almost that you're saying, is that people crave authenticity.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We think people want us to mold to what they want and all these things. And it may seem like that, but even if you don't fit the mold and you take the path less traveled, people respect that because you're authentic.
Yeah.
Right. And in the long run, people are going to respect authenticity, even though in the moment they may not agree with you or try to pressure you or, call you names or look down on you. Or so it's anybody listening. I think that's powerful, is just remembering that people crave your authenticity.
Yeah.
People respect when you do what you believe in, even when it's not popular, right? Like that is one of the most noble things you could do, is to stay true to what you know is right, even when it's not popular.
Yeah.
Wise words, Matt.
Exactly, brother. Couldn't have said it better myself, man.
You already said it. Well, thanks for your time, man. I think this was super beneficial, not just for me, but I believe it'll be beneficial to everybody that listens.
Well, thank you, buddy. And again, man, I'm so, we're kindred spirits, and you wanted to help people just to get through. So thank you, brother.
Keep doing you, man. We'll check back in with you. Like I said, this podcast ain't going nowhere, so we're going to need to do round 2.
Hey, let's do it.
We'll catch up once the book is released.
I love it, man.
All righty, brother.
All righty.
All right, man. Thanks again. We appreciate you.
Thank you, bud.
Adios.
Bye-bye.